Welcome to Covenant Calendar, everyone, on this Shabbat, the day of Yahuwah. We're so thankful to be here. I'm quite sure that you're going to receive a blessing. He promised that on his Shabbat. I'm very excited about this study today. I'm very, very excited, to be quite honest. It's about the Teshuva. This is part 2. And I want to make sure you understand this headline. Yahuwah hath appointed. That word appointed is emphasized for a reason. He appointed with absolute specifications, appointed for man a 365 plus cycle shane or year, and that is regulated by a Teshuva shadow. It's an appointment, and I believe it's speaking directly of the time of the sundial incident on the sundial of Ahaz. So I hope we can explain this clearly for you today, and I hope it's a blessing to you as much as it was for me. Covenant truth. When you have covenant truth, it dismantles deception step by step. It just dismantles it. It's that sure. And a question I have, will an altered Tekufa circuit, will it accept the original 360-degree shadow cycle of Teshuva, the returning? Or will that alteration cause a problem? That's the question. In part 1, we learned some basics about the shadow of Teshuva. Number 1, the marking of a lesser degree of light, which is a shadow, on a highly specific cycle of the year, which is the vernal equinox north of the equator. In part 1, we also learned about the shadow of Teshuva, which ascertains a 360-degree completed circuit, providing the only cycle of the year upon which pi, that's 22/7 or 3.14, it's the only cycle of the year on which that symbol for infinity can be positively established. Why? Because it's the 360th degree of a completed circle. In part 1, we also learned that the shadow of Teshuva is Yahuwah's sign from Genesis 1, verse 14, which regulates his shane, that's year. Number 4, the shadow of Teshuva occurred on the 360th cycle of the year up to the point of the sundial. Make note of this. It's Ahaz's sundial. This will become very important in the future. And it marked a point in the event on which Hezekiah requested the shadow to return back 10 degrees. That name, Hezekiah, is Hezekiah. The spelling you see there is the phonics from the Hebrew into English. Let's now pick up where we left off with Hezekiah. Teach us to number our days. That's the instruction we receive out of Psalms 90, verse 12. Teach us to number our days to bring our hearts unto wisdom. Numbering is Yahuwah's provisional weapon to guard his word. Weapon's a pretty strong word, isn't it? It's an extremely strong word. What happens if we don't have numbering? Without numbering, our order for defense of Torah would be seriously disarmed. I want to thank Pastor David Matthews for these very succinct words. Him and I were discussing this one day. Where would we be without numbering? What would we have against the moon? Not against the moon, but I should say against the lunar system, the lunar calendar, without numbering. Without numbering, where would we be to show the fallacy of the Zadok calendar, the Dead Sea Scroll calendars? Where would we be without that order to number our days? I believe that verse is a direct application for us in this late time right now. We are to number our days. That numbering is going to show us the exact calendar that Yahuwah has required us to be on for his appointments. Teach us to number our days. Yes, Teshuva comes into full recognition there. With those thoughts under our belt about it being our weapon, let's continue on and examine what Scripture underscores as Yahuwah's method to determine the first month in the 365 plus cycle Shoneh. Then we can count to Abib 14, Passover. You might have noticed that Abib does not have a capital letter there. Why? Because Abib isn't actually the name of the month. It's not actually a proper name. Oh, yes, we will see it with capitals in various sources. But in actuality, the word Abib only means the greening. It's the time when things are in bud and going green, the time of brand new life. Going right into Hezekiah's time here in the sundial. We're going to look at 2 Kings 20, verse 1. In those days, Hezekiah was sick unto death. And Yeshayahu, the prophet, son of Amoz, went to him and said to him, Thus saith Yahuwah, set your house in order, for you are going to die and not live. And he turned his face toward the wall and prayed to Yahuwah, saying, I pray to you, O Yahuwah, remember how I have walked before you in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done what was good in your eyes. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. And it came to be, before Yeshayahu had gone out into the middle court, that the word of Yahuwah came to him, saying, Return and say to Hezekiah, the leader of my people, Thus saith Yahuwah, the Elohim of David your father, I have heard your prayer. I have seen your tears. See, I'm going to heal you. On the third day, go up to the house of Yahuwah. Verse 6. And I shall add to your days 15 years, Shoneh. I want you to notice the word years is emphasized. Very, very important. Very clear calendar lingo right here. Why? Why did I emphasize it with Shoneh? Because the lunar calendar cannot be Shoneh. The Dead Sea Scroll calendars with a 364-day year cannot be Shoneh. And yet in this scripture, it's written that Yahuwah is going to add 15 Shoneh onto the life of Hezekiah. I'm going to start again. And I shall add to your days 15 years and deliver you and this city from the hand of the sovereign of Ashur, and shall defend this city for mine own sake and for the sake of David my servant. And Yeshayahu said, Take a cake of figs. And they took and laid it on the boil, and he recovered. And Hezekiah said to Yeshayahu, What is the sign that Yahuwah does heal me, and that I shall go up to the house of Yahuwah the third day? So what is that sign, everyone? Do we understand what that sign is? Have we read about it? The sign, I want to look at it here. It references the Tzadi Lamed shadow. And I want you to notice here, I have 120 emphasized. This word Tzadi Lamed is worth in value 120. I want you to remember this because this is going to become important. Well, it already is important, not just for this study, but in the following study coming. So when you read Tzadi Lamed or Tzal, as you see it here, Tzal, think 120. And again, this is from 2 Kings 20, verse 9. I ask you, do you see the lamed in that cell, the shadow? That lamed is an instructor. He gives direction and gives instruction. It shows the path that we should follow. That's what's in Sal, the shadow, 120. 2 Kings 20, verse 9. And Yeshayahu said, this is the sign for you from Yahuwah, that Yahuwah does the word which he has spoken. Shall the shadow go forward 10 degrees or backward, or go backward 10 degrees? Did he reference the sundial itself? No. Did he reference the ground around the sundial? No. Did he reference the sun? No. What was the sign? What was the authority given to function this this movement 10 degrees? The authority from Yahuwah was given to this shadow, Sal, 120, with the lamed, the directions, the instructions. So there's two words here. You'll notice these orange and pink boxes come up here. This is where I'm referencing in the bottom square. Hezekiah's shadow request, under Yahuwah's authorization, did indeed move it backwards 10 degrees. Let's first look at the words alak and moluth to see if this shadow movement, to see if it transgressed any of Yahuwah's boundaries. So just so you're sure, top left-hand corner, moluth here and elach here. These are the two words in the scripture. I put the interlinear up here so that you could see these are the two words that I'm looking at, and they are indeed in this verse. So when this shadow moved back 10 degrees, was it a transgression or not? Will the shadow, elach, be in compliance with Yahuwah? He did instruct it to happen. He did give authority for it to happen. So maybe it's just safe to assume that there's no transgression. The ISA supplies us with he goes, referencing the shadow. In what manner does he, being the shadow, in what manner does it go according to Hebrew? And more specifically, from which source does this shadow of the sundial of Ahaz receive its authority? Who can give that authority of the shadow? Can man do that? Is man allowed? Continuing with 2 Kings 20, verse 9, and the word halak. This is from Gesenius' lexicon. I got this out of the Blue Letter Bible. Did a screenshot with it. The following constructions of this verb should be noticed. With an account, it is to go through or over a place, as in Deuteronomy 1:19. For an example, if you want to look that up. Deuteronomy 1:19. And when we departed from Horeb, we went through all that great and terrible wilderness, which ye saw by the way of the mountain of the Amorites, as Yahuwah our Elohim commanded us. And we came to Kadesh Barnea. What I want you to see is this word translated to English. We went through all. So it's covering quite a place. It's got full coverage, if you will. Remember, this is the word that was used for that shadow. It covered a specific place. The steps of Ahaz's sundial were the assigned place for the shadow to travel. Since Yahuwah was orchestrating this event, the most important question arises. Was this an alteration to the principle of the shadow's boundaries? Or will the Matzorot peripheries of the Shoneh, that's the year, will they remain intact for fully regulated control of the Teshuva shadow? Next question. Was this shadow change within limitations of Yah? Or was it outside of his boundaries? 2 Kings 20, verse 9, halach, and that's transferred to us as it goes. This also is from Gesenius. To walk, to live, to follow any manner of life. Who walketh, lives or conducts himself how? Uprightly, very important. What about this one? According to the counsel of the wicked. Well, that tells us that context is pretty important. Yahuwah would remove this definition out of the way. It's simply not applicable. That's why it's underlined in red to recognize. What about this one? This word halach, to follow the precepts of Yahuwah. That sounds pretty fair. That's why it's in blue. If Yahuwah was orchestrating this event, it's got to be pretty sure that he finds it acceptable. But how can this opposite meaning, how can that be considered? Why is that there? It's something we need to think about. But continuing on with this word, halak, to live, to walk in truth, in uprightness. Pretty straightforward there. And you have the verses to search this out. To walk before Yahuwah. That's pretty direct. Doesn't get any more direct than that. And to walk with Yahuwah. To lead a life pleasing to Yahuwah. That's the word halak. That's the definitions. That's some of the authority that was applied to this shadow movement. As we see, this word in context is used quite strongly to indicate abiding with the precepts of Yahuwah. Nothing short of it. Again, we're looking at this shadow with Hezekiah. This shadow is the Tzadi Lamed shadow. And again, I want you to see this. I need to emphasize this. Valued at 120. That's the letters, the Tzadi Lamed letters. Verse 10. And Hezekiah said, it would be easy for the shadow to go down 10 degrees. No, but let the shadow go backward 10 degrees. The shadow, nothing else. It was the shadow option that was given to him. Either this shadow could move forward or backwards. This shadow is identified as the one that has authority. Hezekiah provides his request for the shadow's action. In the Hebrew, it does not appear he had an open choice, but merely provided us with his preferred option. Yahuwah provided him two options. Yahuwah already had a purpose in mind. Remember, it is Yahuwah that orchestrated this event. Context, context, context. This is the importance. Continuing on this word, moluth, mal. This is from John Parkhurst. We're going to be looking at the word moluth, H4609. And this is given to us as steps, as in the steps of the sundial, and or degrees for measuring the shadow's action. So we go to the root of this word moluth, and it's mal, taken from John Parkhurst's lexicon. To decline, deflect, go aside, decliner, deflecter. But in the Hebrew Bible, it is used only in a moral or spiritual sense for declining from a rule or law. That's interesting. Declining from a rule or law. Continuing down to this box down here, it differs from, it differs from chata, which is to deviate from the law. It differs, remember, which is to deviate from the law, considered as a scope or aim. And from pasha, which is going over, beyond, or transgressing it. So it's different from these two words. It's different from the word that would openly declare it was transgressing. It's important, something we need to look at. And then we come down here. It can also be referencing to a robe. What kind of a robe would that be? What is that shadow delineating? What kind of a robe? Would it be a robe of righteousness in the blood ratified calendar of Yahuwah? Just a thought. A robe. What could a series of steps reveal in terms of a robe? Could it reference a righteous garment, perhaps? That righteous garment that was enveloping the earth as it was spoken into fruition in Genesis 1:1? The covenant. In this Hebrew word, moluth, Yahuwah reveals an acceptable aberration in permitting the shadow to accept 5 extra cycles within its established boundaries. Yahuwah's statutes of engagement for the shadow, they were not transgressed. Moluth also reveals a connection to a robe of sorts. So what type of robe, what type of garment might this be? Asking Noah, what type of garment might this be? Noah, will this be a 66.666667 garment? Could it be? And what type of garment is that? Well, we're going to find out later on in this study. And most important, will this robe assault the sheet garment as created in Bereshit, the first word of Scripture? Will it assault it? Will it transgress it? Or will it be acceptable or not? Is it possible this word moluth implies an adherence to the 360-degree foundational paradigm within the calendar of the covenant that supports pi? The 360-degree circular equation that maximizes eternal qualities. Is that what this word moluth works with? The sheet robe of righteousness recorded in Genesis 1:1, which included a 360-degree circular format that reflected the 360 cycle in a year. This inclusive aberration of the shadow brought in a customized garment orchestrated by Yahuwah. This secondary robe to encase this earth was designed to be a temporary garment until 3.5 Shane, 1260 Yom, and 42 Chodesh, or months. That's the 3 time frames, prophetic time frames in Revelation. So there was to be this temporary garment until these time frames in Revelation come to be prior to the return of Yahushua HaMashiach. So how is it that we know about this secondary robe? What is a secondary robe? Could that be a reference to the 365-day year? That would have to go back to 360 cycles per year, so that the 3.5 Shane, or years, and the 1260 Yom, or days, and the 42 Chodesh, months, where they could function all together and equal out and allow the time frame to be accomplished as Yahuwah has spoken. Is that what this secondary robe is referencing? That secondary robe would have to be removed so that prophetic time could be fulfilled. So what robe changed? Was it the 360 cycle Shane that changed? What robe was installed? What about the 66.666667% based 365 plus cycle Shane? Is that the second robe that was installed upon this earth? What do I mean by robe? Well, this system envelops this whole earth, this 365-day or 365 cycle year. Is that the robe we're referencing here? If the Shanae was 360 cycles and degrees, and it was changed to 365 plus cycles, note 66.666667, if it was changed, how then can it still be Shanae? Yahuwah said he does not change. Here's a very definite change. How can it still be Shanae? Again, what robe changed? The Yom count, which is the number of cycles per Shanae, is what changed. What then remained? Steadfast, unchangeable, and anointed, maintaining the Kodesh paradigm boundaries, which were established and seeded from Zion. What was it that remained steadfast? 2 Kings 20, verse 9, and the word Elach. H1980 is the designated number for the word. Let us not forget Elach. Scripture records this action on the sundial of Ahaz indeed pleased Yahuwah. He was okay with it. It was acceptable in his eyes. Well, here's where we understand that it was acceptable, because it has in this word to live, to walk in truth, in uprightness, to walk before Yahuwah, and to walk with Yahuwah, and to lead a life pleasing to Yahuwah. That's the word that is incorporated with this this change in the sundial, which caused a 360 to 365 day year. This word Allah is involved with that. It pleases Yahuwah. So how can it please Yahuwah? How can this be if there's a change? The governing regulator, here's the letters Thadi Lamed, which, remember, is equal to 120 in value units. 120 in value units. This governing regulator, which is the shadow of Teshuva, which happens on the vernal equinox, these perimeters were never tampered with, not by anyone, no, not even Yahuwah. This shadow occurrence on the equinox on the day of Teshuva is a standard that does not move and does not shift. Yahuwah said, I do not change. This is one of the things he was referencing to, was that shadow. And I just want to be sure that this shadow on vernal equinox is located north of the equator. Located as in, this is the location north of the equator shadow which we are to follow. Point to ponder. When surrounding identities change, and one single factor remains steadfast and unmoved, how can we then understand this as a fundamental pillar? The 360-degree circuit formatting of the Matzerot never changed. That's how it can be a fundamental pillar, when it does not change. Can we then recognize the pi factor? That pi factor needed to determine the quantity of a 360-degree circle? In man's finite knowledge, pi represents our understanding of infinity. Pi has been taken to the trillions of numbers without pattern. It's completely sporadic into the trillions, and it has not stopped. So in our understanding, it represents infinity. And that can only be found in 360 degrees, a completed circle. It cannot be found in 364, as in the Dead Sea Scroll calendar. and it cannot be found in 354 as in the lunar calendar. 360 is the only identity that pi can be supported. Please notice Yahuwah's blueprint stamp, the Tav. The Tav is a sign, a seal, a signature, a mark, and it's a mark of character, actually. It's kind of like his fingerprint. Dawn to dawn. Remember, this is his blueprint. Dawn to dawn. 30 cycle Chodesh, or month. 7 Chodeshim, or 7 months. That's the Moedim worship festival schedule, those 7 months. And the 360-degree Tekufah's tabernacle in the Matzerot. And the plan of salvation printed within the Matzerot. Prophetic time. These base elemental foundations were never altered or intercalated in any way. This is Yahuwah's blueprint stamp, which does not change. The shadow of Teshuva removes all notion of intercalation in Yahuwah's kingdom. That shadow is the Tzadi Lamed. It's the 120 value. Remember that. The shadow of Teshuva at the vernal equinox. It has been mentioned that Yahuwah prophesied this alteration when speaking to Noah. We're going to look at this notion, and you can decide for yourself what your conclusion is. 2 Kings 20, verse 9. Prior to this unique sundial event, a 360 cycle Shana, or year, functioned on this earth. So there was 360 days in 1 year on this earth, prior to the sundial event with Ahaz. After this particular sundial incident, the earth revealed a 365 cycle Shana. The incident of the sundial event added 5 days to the calendar. So what type of shadow alteration did Yahuwah need to generate in order to retain his boundaries for Shana? Be careful with this question. I'm going to ask it again. What type of shadow alteration did Yahuwah need to generate in order to retain his boundaries for Shana? Was there a shadow alteration? Or was there not? Yahuwah established a 360 cycle Shana at creation. Yet, he had seen enough of man's wicked ways and announced to Noah, this is found in Genesis 6, verse 3, he announced a different future format of Shana. This new format contained a signature identifying with fleshly humans. Yahuwah distanced himself from this format connected to man, which then arrived at around 700 BC with Hezekiah. It's 701 or 700 BC. We may be looking at 701 at this point. Yahuwah's separation is observed through the number 120. His separation. Are we able to link creation's Tzadi Lamed shadow with post Hezekiah's Shana? That Tzadi Lamed shadow is the shadow of Teshuva at equinox. Does that connect with the year after Hezekiah, after his life? And by what manner does Yahuwah identify our temporary 365 cycle Shana year with man? How is that identification possible? Will the number 120 designation, will it reveal the connection to man? Let's read down on the bottom here, Genesis 6, verse 3. And Yahuwah said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is flesh. Sorry, for that he also is flesh, yet his days, note the emphasis, yet his days shall be how many? 120 years. There's the 120 again. What linkage does that have when speaking back to Noah? Well, here we read in Genesis 6, verse 3, it's still Shanae, but what is the difference? That shadow is still there, the shadow of Teshuva, but it's still Shanae. You can see the words over here, Shanae, H8141, same word. So let's recall the number of man. It's equated to the number 6. So going to be thinking here, is this inside the box or is it outside the box? What's your choice? Please allow me to ask a delicate question. We know Genesis 6, verse 3 has been translated by those not accepting Yahuwah's 360 cycle Shanae and the dawn-to-dawn foundation from creation. What if the number 120 that we find in that verse, what if the words were actually intended by Yahuwah to identify the type, as in the design or the format of year, equated with man? Was it about strictly counting 1 to 120, as in quantity? Or is it 120 as in a format connected to man? Or is it both? Yes, the supplied format provides us with the idea of a numbered quantity count or sum for years, a final 120 numbered as in quantity. That's what we normally think when we read that. Yet, is it possible that Yahuwah was prophetically speaking of specifically formatted years, still regulated by the Teshuva shadow, yet purposely built, purposely designed to identify and counter the reason for lunar-based apostasy by orchestrating this internal reorganization? Is that the reason that Yahuwah had for this alteration? Man kept gravitating back to the lunar system, and Yahuwah was sick of it. And when he did this alteration to the internal works of the Tekufa circuit, he changed the month, the lunar month, from 30 days down to 27 point, oh, I forget what it is, 27.348 or something, rounded off to 28 days per month. He changed the 30-day lunar month a few days shorter so that his people could understand the lunar months are not how you determine the feast. This is the event that took place with the sundial event of Hezekiah. Why was it designed like this? What was the reason? If the human race could easily perceive this change from 30 cycles per lunar month to a starkly different 27.31 cycle lunar months being revealed in the celestial pattern, would this help prevent their apostasy back to the lunar system? Because the lunar system, the lunar month, according to Yahuwah's designation, is only 27.321 cycles per month. Yet man has taken upon himself to change Yahuwah's perimeters and make his own perimeters and decide that the moon must go past the point of where it arose to accommodate a 29.5 day month so it can come as close as it can to a 30-day month. But Yahuwah here intended for us to realize that the lunar month, as functioning in the sky, is now only 27.321 cycles. It's not a 30-day month. 27.321 cycle lunar months? Yes, that is the actual function imprinted in the sky according to Yahuwah's peripheries. However, man discarded Yahuwah's set boundaries for a completed circuit and designed his own 29.5-day metonic cycle of the moon. Man, in essence, said, I'll do it my way. James 1, verse 16. Do not go astray, my beloved brothers. Yaakov is referencing the time when his family was following the lunar system of the Yahudim. This is brilliantly revealed in Luke chapter 2. Yet, after the resurrection, he realized their folly and is warning everyone to beware of this deception. After the crucifixion, Yaakov understood the covenant calendar. The lunar-based deception is further exposed in John 7 when Yahusha emphatically witnessed against it, both in extremely direct, strong words, and he revealed it thoroughly by his sandals, the actions of his feet. Have you ever been told to listen to Yahusha's sandal? If not, you're being suggested that right now. We need to listen to what his sandals said. The footprints in the sand speak volumes to us. What did Yahusha do? That's what his sandals are speaking. Are we paying attention or not? Outside the box, number 2. Might Yahuwah's Shanae internal adjustment connect to the lunar cycle reduction to 27.321587 days? Internal. What does that word internal mean in this context? Well, internal being, this internal adjustment is inside of the 2 Teshuva shadows, or the 2 days of equinox. The reason for being the reason here for this internal adjustment is being man's continuous fleshly gravitation to sin, as in the lunar-based worship abominations. See Isaiah 1. And then, when referencing man's 365 cycle years, when his years are ended, and Earth is returned back to Yahuwah's original 360 cycles Shanae, as at creation, it is then and only then that Revelation's prophetic timelines, the 1260 cycles, the 3.5 years, and the 42 months, these prophecies can then be fulfilled on Yahuwah's time. It will not be man's time. And we're going to see why. Work with me here. Can it be? Genesis 6, verse 3. And Yahuwah said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days. What does he mean by that? And what does it mean by flesh? Flesh, well, it's man's persistent to gravitate into paganism and extremely evil lifestyle. Yes, it was necessary to destroy the earth, referencing back to the flood. Yahuwah prophesied of a time when his Shanae will be rearranged within itself, not outside. The peripheries won't be removed and rearranged. It will be a rearrangement within itself in order to counter the persistence to paganism. Yahuwah desired to arrange time so man can easily identify Yahuwah's Kodesh set-apart appointments. This involved purposely shortening the lunar month to 27.321 cycles. And what about the 120? Where does that come in? Still working on it. Genesis 6, verse 3. And Yahuwah said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120. His days. He is distancing himself from these years that will be formed by a 120 fashioning application. Choosing my words carefully here. What about that verse? Teach us to number our days to bring our hearts unto wisdom. Psalms 90, verse 12. It's now 365. Whose days are these? Could these be his days, as in man? Allow me to ask this question. Is this 120 value, is it an Is this 120 value, is it an identification tag of an eternal Shana arrangement, being 360 cycles to 365? And is it purposely designed to wake up man to Yahuwah's Shana, his Shana-based plan of salvation? How is this going to wake up man? Do you think when it went to 365, it had some people wondering? Do you think it will be any different when we go back to 360? Do you think it's going to cause a stir? Not to the people who've been paying attention. They'll be excited. So what about this 120 when it comes to the context of years? Let us look at years. Genesis 6, verse 3. And Yahuwah said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. Could it be format? Will these newly designed Shana years reveal a 120 numeric difference? And will this 120 number, will it reveal direct linkage to man? What is Yahuwah trying to tell us? Maybe a better question is, are we listening? What's he trying to tell us? That there will be a time when the 365 is taken away to facilitate Earth's allotted time to repent. You have 3.5 years, you have 1,260 days, and you have 42 months. Do you think it's time to repent? This is a time frame that I have spoken. And when this goes back to 360, those time frames will be activated. Do you think we might need to repent of the traditions that we have been keeping? Where in the world, pun intended, do we find a 120 difference from 360 to 365? Where is that difference? It's only 5 as far as I can see. Will there be a 120 number difference between the 360 year and a 365 year? That's what I'm asking. Where's that 120 coming from? What's it doing? Looking for a 120 difference between a 360 cycle year and a 365 cycle Shana year. Let's keep it basic. 5 cycles different. How many hours in a cycle? 24. 5 cycles of 24 equates to, look at it, 120 hours. 5 cycles of 24 equates to 120 hours. A 360 cycle year contains 8,646.152 hours. A 365 cycle year contains 8,766 0.152 hours. 120-hour difference. The very brilliant difference between a 360 cycle Shanae and the 365 cycle Shanae is 120 hours. How about that, Noah? When man's years shall be 120. What do you think of that, Noah? The difference. So how in the world does this relate to man? How can we connect this to man, 120 hours? Maybe this is just going too far, and you might want to pull the pin right here. No? Well, in that case, let's examine the pin. The pin. We're going to be searching for man's personal identification number. I'm sure you've all heard that PIN number before. The Hebrew text gives an indication that the shadow not only reversed by 10 degrees, but also returned to the original position. The questions then arise. Why 10 degrees? Why not 9 or 11? Will 10 degrees provide an indication for a state of existence showing a what? A temporary timeline? And then if it does, how so? Well, first, dawn to dawn. There's 360 degrees divided by 24 hours is 15 degrees. That leaves us with 1 hour equaling 15 degrees. So let's question the 9 degrees first. We see that 9 degrees of 15 equates to an even 60%. 60%, huh? Nothing stands out yet. 60% doesn't do anything, no indication of anything. It seems like maybe the 9 degrees out of the 15 just cannot be applicated to anything, any connection. Let's move on. We need to look at 10 degrees of 15. This 9 is not working. But let's look at 11 degrees first. 11 degrees of 15 equals 73.3333%. No bells and whistles going off yet. 73% makes no difference. 11 degrees has no meaning. Neither of these numbers, 9 or 11, relate to anything intriguing. Again, why did Yahuwah decide to cause an effect within one 24-hour period to the degree of 10? Why specifically 10? Why was Hezekiah not given an option of degrees? Why did Yahuwah already have the number 10 designed and planned out? What direct indication could he be revealing to us? Will our eyes be wide open or will they be wide shut? What are we doing? Are we paying attention or not? Recall, it is this particular time, about 700 BC, and could easily be 701, we're looking at that right now, that 30 civilizations who had been documenting their 360 cycle calendar paused for approximately 25 to 70 years. That's depending on the civilization. They paused their calendar documentation around this time. When they resumed their calendar documentation, it then contained 365 plus cycles in the year. You think it was a stir when they found 5 cycles on the end of their year? You think they were mystified? Is it possible they had to wait a number of years to realize that those 5 cycles were not a mistake and they're going to continue? Well, there was quite a pause before the civilizations come out with their 365 plus calendar again. Pertinent questions must be asked. Why 10 degrees? Why not 13? Why not 23? Why not 8 or 14 degrees? What did Yahuwah have in mind? Does Yahuwah have a specific message embedded within the 10 degrees for us to recognize to our eternal advantage? Let's look at it. Is that sign not just for Hezekiah, but for us too? Are we paying attention? 10 degrees. Yahuwah caused the shadow to move reverse first, then return 10 degrees or 10 steps. The steps are the format of the sundial. Note whose sundial it was on. It was the sundial of Ahaz. He is recorded as living Shanei years and reigning Shanei years. That rules out lunar months. You cannot have a Shanei year made of lunar months. Cannot happen. And if we look here, it says here, it's the shadow on the sundial. How can that sundial be recording the phases of the moon with a shadow? It can't. Is Yahuwah telling us something? Is Yahuwah telling us that Ahaz was operating on the solar system regulated by the sundial? 360 degrees, that's what's on a sundial, divided by 24 hours. That gives us 15 degrees per hour. What about that 10 degrees? 10 degrees of 15 degrees is 66.66667% of a 15-degree segment, which is 60 minutes, which then the 10 degrees equals to about 40 minutes. I hope you noticed the multiple sixes in this equation or this answer. 10 degrees of 15 comes out to 66.66667. Are we connecting the sixth to man? Think of that very carefully. Number 6, Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the esteem of Elohim. Number 6 is the number designated to man because he has fallen short of perfection. What then could be the significance of the percentage of 10 degrees? 10 degrees is 66.66667% of 15. The number 6 symbolizes man, which infers incompletion, contamination, short of the glory of Yahuwah, short of perfection, and works of the devil, just to list a few. Obviously, the works of the devil does not apply here, as this 10-degree event was orchestrated by Yahuwah. Is it possible to see the symbolization of short of the glory of Yahuwah and short of perfection? These definitions, is it possible these can symbolize, and could they apply to being seen through the reference to man's futility in achievement and his gravitation to apostate lunar worship? Is there a connection? This lunar worship that man went to all the time, was it short of the glory of Yahuwah? Was it short of perfection? Was it man's evil heart that brought him there? Number 6. We know fully that which is short of perfection will not be brought into the eternal kingdom of Yahuwah. Oops. Let's bring the timeline spoken by Yahuwah to Noah into this equation. Let us compare the difference of 360 days of Shanei to 365 civil allocated days still within Shanei. A 360 cycle year contains 8,646.152 hours. A 365 cycle year contains 8,766.152 hours. Do the subtraction, you see that on the right in this brown box, and you come out again with 120, same as we mentioned before, 120. Let's read that verse spoken to, or the words that were spoken to Noah, recorded in Genesis 6, verse 3. And Yahuwah said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet, whose days? His days. Context is man. His days shall be 120 years. Is that quantity or is that format? Did Yahuwah prophesy of this sundial incident to Noah? Did he prophesy that at some point he was going to change the days from 360 to 365? Think about that. Would that change also include 120 hours to identify man by 66666667? Could there be a connection? By causing the shadow to return back 10 degrees, there was an increase of 120 hours. Located where? Between the shadows of Shanae. The 10 sundial degrees are directly equated through numbers to man through the 66666667%. With that in mind, let's read this verse again. And Yahuwah said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, and his days, his 365 plus days, shall be formatted after 120. Those are his years. If I can speak it out like that with the evidence that I have put forth. Outside the box thinking a little bit, maybe quite a bit, but looks very applicable. Very, very applicable. His year days, that's man, his year days are assigned as 120 value. Man's timeline, 365 plus, has been fashioned to assist his salvation, literally. 120 designation connects to 66.666667% is not mine, is what Yahuwah is saying. His year days are 120, they are not mine. And when his year days are done, we will go back to 360 cycles per year so that the timelines I spoke about in Revelation 12 and 13 and in Daniel can be fulfilled. As Yahuwah through numbers provided another clear indication that the 365 plus cycle year, which was activated by Yahuwah through empowerment of the sundial's shadow, is a temporary establishment. 365 plus, a temporary establishment? Could it be? Revelation 12, verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by Elohim, to be nourished there 1,260 days. There's the 1260. Revelation 12:14. And the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times, and half a time from the presence of the serpent. There's your 3.5 years. You can read about that in Daniel 7, verse 25 also. Revelation 13, verse 5. And he was given a mouth speaking great matters and blasphemies, and he was given authority to do so 42 months. There's your 42 Chodeshim, 30-day months. 1,260 cycles, 3.5 years, 42 months. Nothing more, nothing less, for Yahuwah has spoken. So if we look at 3.5 years and the years that we live in today, which are 365 plus, it comes out to 1,277.5 cycles. That is 17.5 cycles over 1,260. That surpasses the limit, the periphery that Yahuwah pronounced on these three timelines. We cannot see prophecy fulfilled in the present 365-day calendar. It cannot happen. Yahuwah said, in 42 months, in 3.5 years, there will be 1,260 cycles or days. The 365 does not accommodate that. Neither does the 364. Neither does the 354 lunar. 365 plus a temporary boundary. 365 plus a temporary Shana. Yahuwah has spoken. His final sequence of Earth's events will be counted as 3.5 Shana, 1,260 cycles, and 3.5 years. 3.5 years times 365, which equals to 1,277.5 cycles, which will not and cannot find placement in Yahuwah's spoken time frame. Are we thinking there might be a change? I say count on it. 365 plus is a temporary Shana. Has Yahuwah purposely orchestrated the 10 degrees or steps of irregular movement on the sundial of Ahaz to provide us with a 66.666667% visual indicator warning sign? What about Genesis 1, verse 14, speaking of the lights, and they shall be for sign? Isn't the shadow a sign? What about this 66666667 sign? Are we counting it, or are we oblivious to it? Is it a warning sign? Amos 3:7. Surely the sovereign Yahuwah will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants, the prophets. It was spoken to Noah. Man's years will be 120. Could this 66.666667%, could this be visual oil in your lamp to empower your journey? Could it be? Could it be an understanding that will support you through these last days? Because you understand there will be an end. It will give you strength. Yahuwah authorized the tzal. That's the shadow. That's the value at 120. He authorized this shadow, gracing the sundial of Ahaz, to attach 5 temporary civil cycles, equating with man. And there it is, the 120 and all the 6s and a 7 again, onto his festal Shana, this festal Shana structure of 360. Do you think Yahuwah could have done that? He authorized this shadow to do that? And that you think it could be temporary so that we could go back to 360 so that the time frame in Revelation, the 3 timelines, can be fulfilled? That Tzadi Lamed has a value of 120. That's the value of that word, Tzah, shadow. Interesting. The Shana number of 360 was extended to a 365 plus, and then will be restored back to the original 360 cycle Shana, which was seeded from where? Seeded from Zion. What entity regulates the Shanay's sequential structure, constituting it as a legal Shanay? Could it be the Tzadi Lamed shadow, the 120? A Shanay that changes? Does not Scripture declare Yahuwah does not change? What then changed and connected to man? And what remains steadfast? The Tzadi Lamed, the shadow. Is that what remained? Yahuwah's Shanay is regulated by his Tzal, shadow, identifying the day of Teshuva at the equinox. Yahuwah chose the vernal equinox as the time for the shadow of Teshuva. This is the critical point for the 360-degree celestial circuit of completion. The shadow of Teshuva also initiates the next and new year circuit, starting at dawn of the next day. For Shanay to accept a significant internal change, that is 360 cycles to 365, and still remain proclaimed by Shanay, the standard which identifies Shanay must remain steadfast and immovable to allow the same name identification process. Otherwise, it could not be called Shanay after Hezekiah's sundial incident. The question resurfaces again. What identity registers the Shanay year as repeating a second time over and over and over again, and still retains the perfect duplication format? Is there a reason why the pyramids and Sphinx were positioned precisely according to the Matzerot to positively identify the 2 yearly cycles of Teshuva? Is it possible this was influenced by Yosef? Why did Yahuwah have Moshe trained with the very best of education, Acts 7, verse 22, in the system that governed Mitzrayim, a regularity which hinged on the shadow of Teshuva to regiment their economy? Is that why Moshe was trained here? Or did Yahuwah make a mistake? Did this regularity of the shadow of Teshuva, did that assist Moshe at the time of the Exodus? Why was Moshe commanded by Yahuwah to raise the circular wilderness tent of meeting after the preparation cycle of the week, which just happened, if you believe that, to be the cycle for the shadow of Teshuva? Was it a coincidence, or was that fully under plan of Yahuwah? More final questions, if you will. Why would Yahuwah make certain that we have full access to the information for verification that the Tekufa circuit started on the very first cycle of the 360-degree circuit? Find that in Genesis 1, verses 1 to 5. Why? Why that information? Now the big one. Was it pure fluke that Yahuwah commanded to raise the tabernacle on the first cycle of the second year? In Exodus 40, verse 2, when the last cycle of the year had already established the shadow of Teshuva? The shadow was formed from east to west on the preparation cycle immediately prior. Was this pure fluke? Did it just kind of happen that way? Or was this planned before Earth was even spoken into existence? Was that seed already there from Zion? Question: where did the Teshuva light seed for this action, written below, where did it derive? Going to look at a quote here. On the left, I have the full page written here, so you can stop this and read it at another time. I've taken the finer print at the bottom of that page, and I've expanded it so that we could read it. This is from the Calendars of Ancient Israel, page 5, by Julian Morgenstern. Let's read it. That it was possible under the system of calendar 1 to determine exactly the dates of spring and fall equinoxes. Exactly. You notice that. Exactly. That's not the lunar calendar. Continuing on, I have shown conclusively in M11 that he showed this very, very well. Continuing, these were the 2 days in the year upon which the first rays of the rising sun shone straight through the eastern gate of the temple at Jerusalem, opened for this specific moment, and down the long axis of the temple in, sorry, into the Holy of Holies at its western end. I'm going to read this again because I need you to understand what's happening here. We are not taught this, everyone. This is not taught coming out of Jerusalem. In fact, this is hidden, over, covered, disguised, distinct, or removed from our understanding. But this is given to us from Julian Morgenstern, who brought this to us from historic records. I'm going to read this again, talking about the spring and fall equinoxes. These were the 2 days in the year upon which the first rays of the rising sun shone straight through, not just up to, but shone straight through the eastern gate of the temple at Jerusalem, opened for this specific moment, and and down the long axis of the temple into the Holy of Holies at its western end. Enters at the east and goes in right to the western end. This institution made it possible to determine the exact length of a solar year with almost mathematical precision. I hope everybody understands the value of this paragraph. This is covenant calendar right here. This is what Moshe did when he raised the tabernacle in the second year of the wilderness on that first day, which was a Shabbat. The foundation was laid by the shadow so that sun could go through door to door in that circular tabernacle. We are not taught this. This is hidden from our knowledge, if at all possible. Yet Yahuwah wants us to have this information. It is being restored. This is the importance of the day of the spring and fall equinoxes. The shadow of Teshuva marks out east to west. Was Yahuwah's tabernacle to be oriented facing east? What does Ezekiel have to say? Ezekiel 8, verse 9. And he said to me, go in. Go ahead, is what he said. Go in and see the evil abominations which they are doing there. He's pointing to Ezekiel. Look, open your eyes. Is this calendar or not? You decide. A purely hypothetical question. Consider this. If Moshe had been commanded by Yahuwah to raise the circular wilderness tabernacle after the sundial shadow returned backwards 10 degrees, would the tabernacle celestial compass, would it then have been out of sync with the Matzerot? Were the children of Yah, after Hezekiah, were they then out of celestial timing with the Matzerot after the sundial incident? Out of timing with the sundial incident. What pillar remained steadfast and what was changed? Back to Ezekiel again. Does Ezekiel have more for us to consider on Teshuva? Ezekiel 8, verse 15. Then he said to me, have you seen this, O son of man? You are to see still greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of the house of Yahuwah. Notice he's in the inner court. He's inside now, looking out. He brought me to the inner court of the house of Yahuwah. And there, at the door, notice, not a ways away from the door, not a long ways from the door, but at the door of the Hekal of Yahuwah, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men. What were they doing? With their backs toward the Hekal of Yahuwah and their faces toward the east. And they were bowing themselves eastward to the sun. Where were their backs? Not only were their backs towards the Hekal, but their backs were in very close proximity of the door. Be careful with those words, the door. If they have their backs towards the temple and backs towards the physical door, what about the spiritual door? I'm going to read this again, starting from the beginning. Not only were their backs towards the Hekal, but their backs were in very close proximity of the door, and by symbolic implication, were spurning the door, Yahusha, as well. Now, do you remember what we just read about the sun going from the east through to the west side of the Hekal or the tabernacle? What day was it when these men were here? Was it not the day of Teshuva, the equinox, when the sun was to shine in the door? What were they doing? They were worshiping the sun, and they were turning their backs to the calendar of Yahuwah. They were turning their backs to the day of Teshuva. Note, Scripture does not say their faces were towards the light. This event is written of the pagan ritual of greeting the orb of the sun as it arises. On equinox day, this still happens today at Stonehenge. Nothing is new under the sun. It happens in many other places also. An assessment here. Ezekiel, within a vision, is taken into the central court, being the Kodesh place. He is looking outwards from the central inside position. He is looking through the door where the porch and the altar are strategically positioned. The sun rises in the east. The entrance portal, terminology chosen carefully, the entrance portal of the Hekal is facing east. It is my opinion, Yahuwah has taken Ezekiel into the Hekal, which is properly aligned with the Matzerot on the highly precise vernal cycle of Teshuva. And the men have turned their backs to the door, being Yahushua HaMashiach, spiritually and physically. What does that tell you about calendar? Not only do the men have their faces trained on the sun in absolute acclamation of allegiance to the pinnacle of pagan deity worship deception, but their backs speak volumes. Their backs proclaim their utter rejection to the physical entity and system provided by Yahuwah to preserve their very lives. On a much deeper level, upon their physical positioning in terms of the entrance, the doorway, notice the terminology, the doorway to the Hekal, their backs exposes downright rejection of the door, Yahushua HaMashiach. They are not children of the light, but confirmed children of the sun. They have rejected the Teshuva's shadow light sign and instead are giving allegiance to a created object, ignoring the stern warning written in the scripture. Ezekiel's vision reveals precise alignment for the Hekal on the cycle of Teshuva. Let me read that one more time. Ezekiel's vision reveals precise alignment for the Hekal on the cycle of Teshuva. You are the temple of Yahuwah today, physically and spiritually. Where is your alignment on the cycle of Teshuva? Are you with the shadow or not? Do you receive the import of this temple Matzerot alignment message? Yes, the tabernacle must be precisely aligned with the Matzerot. Does that include our earthly tabernacle today? Our own body being physical and much more, exponentially more important, spiritual? The shadow sign of Teshuva, equinox, is the physical bridge linking us to the spiritual Kodesh compass for our lives. The spiritual Kodesh compass for our lives. Are we in alignment or not? By accurate scriptural account, Moshe raised the tabernacle according to Yahuwah's command on the cycle immediately following the Teshuva shadow sign, the 360th degree and cycle. It was the first cycle of the first month of the second year in the wilderness. Moshe was provided the shadow of Teshuva going east to west for the foundation alignment of the circular wilderness tent of meeting. It was provided on a preparation cycle. Coincidence? Absolutely not. The shadow of Teshuva was established for absolute alignment with the Matzerot, the granddaddy timepiece of Yahuwah in the sky for eternity. Now we consider the Zadok and Enoch 364-day calendar. We are told this calendar existed from creation. Did it? Moshe raised the tabernacle on the first cycle after the 360th cycle of the year. Let's read in Exodus 40, verse 1. And Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, On the first day of the first month shalt thou set up the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation. It was on his seventh-day Sabbath. Moshe was then 4 cycles short of the Zadok Enoch 364-day calendar specification. Let me read this again. Moshe, under Yahuwah's command, would then have been 4 cycles short of the Zadok and Enoch 364-day calendar specification. Moshe would have needed to wait 4 more cycles to raise the tabernacle on their required 4th cycle start of the year. We have a decision to make. What calendar was Moshe on? Was he on a 364-day Zadok calendar, which does not align with the words of Scripture? Or was he following the calendar of the covenant? Consider the Zadok and Enoch 364-day calendar. We are told this calendar existed from creation. Again, I ask you, did it? Moshe raised the tabernacle on the first cycle after the 360th cycle of the year. Exodus 40, verse 1. And Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, On the first day of the first month shalt thou set up the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation. This was not a suggestion, it was a command. Then we read in verse 16, Thus did Moshe according to all that Yahuwah commanded him, so did he. And it came to pass in the first month, on the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. And Moshe reared up the tabernacle and fastened his sockets and put the boards thereof and put in the bars thereof and reared up his pillars. It was accomplished exactly as Yahuwah commanded. Is Yahuwah's preparation cycle just a myth? The preparation cycle. What is a preparation cycle for? Did Moshe raise the tabernacle according to the 364 cycle calendar? Here it looks perfectly plausible. We have the 361, 362, 363, 364. Why couldn't he raise the tabernacle on this day? Remember, their new start does their new year does start on the fourth cycle of the week, no matter what calendar scenario. Was he to raise the tabernacle here? Was this their new year? Is this where Moshe raised the tabernacle? What about that preparation day that laid down the shadow for wilderness tabernacle alignment with the Matzerah? Where do we find that preparation? Maybe a preparation is just not important. It looks like Moshe may have raised the tabernacle according to the 364-day Dead Sea Scroll calendar. But wait, hang on. Yahuwah is much more complex than this. Is there another stone to turn over? Would it be under the heading of patterns? Are you able to see Yahuwah's preparation? And did Yahuwah prepare to raise the tabernacle on this Dead Sea Scroll New Year illustration chart? Sorry. Do you find a preparation day anywhere here on the first, second, third, and fourth day of the week? No, absolutely there's no preparation. The third cycle and the fourth cycle none of them are preparations. And especially the third cycle of the week, it's not a preparation. So how did Moshe know when or how, which direction to raise that tabernacle? The Dead Sea Scroll calendars demand a fourth cycle of the week, new year, reset start every year, no matter what, period. That's their demand. Did Yahuwah provide a foundation preparation for this monumental event? Or did Yahuwah expect Moshe to shoot from the hip and take a stab in the dark, hoping for precise tabernacle alignment with the Matzerot? Maybe Yasharel did not really need to track the plan of salvation written in the Shemayim. Is it possible Yasharel was actually lost in the wilderness, stumbling along with no official direction? I don't think so. Rubbish, I say to that. Genesis 6, verse 13. And Elohim said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through men. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. And make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shall pitch it within and without with pitch. Preparations. I want you to notice Yahuwah does not allow things to go unprepared. He makes preparations. We're going to be looking at a few of these patterns. Verse 18. But with thee I will establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy son and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee, and take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. Once again, preparations. Yahuwah makes sure of being prepared. Genesis 7, verse 1. And Yahuwah said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteousness before me in this generation. For yet 7 days, notice the emphasis, for yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. Again, preparations. Noah needed to observe Pesach Shani and to orient the animals. Yahuwah provided him with time. Preparations from our Creator. Genesis 7, verse 13. In the self-same day, I want you to notice the Hebrew word etzem, the bone structure. Very important day, in other words. That's the bone structure of our salvation. In the self-same day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them, into the ark. Preparation. Did he just pick any day? Or was there a very, very, very specific day that Noah entered the ark? Or maybe it was just a coincidence. There, the door's open. Quick, run, get in. No. Yahuwah made a preparation. He had a plan. Noah needed to observe Pesach Shani on the account of bearing Methuselah. Yahuwah prepared perfect preparation timing, seen through entering the ark on the Atzem, that's the bone, as in the bone structure, the foundational day of the 10th of the month. The 10th is the cycle the sacrificial lamb was chosen. Yahuwah chose his lamb, being Noah and his family. Yahuwah prepares. He does not miss a beat. So what about the raising of the tabernacle, Moshe? Let's read on. More patterns. Genesis 15, verse 7. And he said unto him, I am Yahuwah that brought thee out of Ur, out of the Chaldees, to give thee this land to inherit it. More preparations made. Verse 9. And he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against the other. But the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger, in a land not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also, that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites not yet full. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. In the self same day, Yahuwah made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. Many preparations were performed before Abram could become a great nation. Nothing was left to coincidence. These are the preparations for a major covenant made for Abram. And it was done when? On the same day. Yahuwah didn't just randomly pick a day off the calendar. No, this was the bone structure day. This is the very important day in his calendar that Yahuwah made a covenant with Avram. Were there special preparations accomplished for the perfect mother to bring forth the Hebrew nation? Let's move forward and look at that. Genesis 24, verse 1. And Abram was old and well stricken in age, and Yahuwah had blessed Abram in all things. And Abraham said unto his eldest servant of the house that ruled over all that he had, Put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and I will make thee swear by Yahuwah, the Elohim of heaven, and the Elohim of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I dwell. But thou shalt go into my country and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son Isaac. Here you see advanced preparation, a very important situation that Yahuwah was preparing for. This is his pattern. Verse 7. Yahuwah Elohim of heaven, which took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and which spake unto me, and that sware unto me, saying, Unto thy seed will I give this land. He shall send his angel before thee, and thou shalt take a wife unto my son, from thence. Preparations. Abraham understood and spoke into the advanced preparation for a Kodesh bride. Did Yahuwah fulfill the advanced preparations as spoken by Abraham? Genesis 24, verse 11. And he made his camels to kneel down without the city by a well of water at the time of the evening, the time that women go out to draw water. And he said, O Yahuwah, Elohim of my master Abraham, I pray thee, send me good speed this day, and show kindness unto my master Abraham. Behold, I stand here by the well of water, and the daughters of the men of the city come out to draw water. And let it come to pass that the damsel to whom I say, let down thy pitcher, I pray thee, that I may drink, and she shall say, drink, and I will give thy camels drink also. She that thou hast appointed for thy servant, she that thou hast appointed, there's preparation. This servant understood preparation. There was already an appointment been made. She that thou hast appointed for thy servant Isaac, and thereby shall I know that thou hast shown kindness unto my master. And it came to pass, before he had done speaking, do you see how quick this is? Before he had done speaking, that behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her pitcher on her shoulder, already prepared to do what she was going to do. Yahuwah had that already done. He had already prepared Rebekah for this appointment. Yahuwah's preparations in Rebekah had begun when she was even in the womb. Genesis 24, verse 51. Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go, and let her be thy master's son's wife, as Yahuwah hath spoken. And they called Rebekah and said unto her, wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go. Yahuwah's preparation, it says there, as Yahuwah hath spoken, it had already been done. Yahuwah had already prepared inside of Rebekah. She was ready to go. There was no hesitation. I will go. When Yahuwah has important things to do, he is prepared. What about the raising of the tabernacle, Zadok? Did Yaakov qualify for such advanced preparations? Be certain that Yaakov's account has many times that Yahuwah has prepared and intervened for him. Genesis 31, verse 19. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he fled. So he fled with all that he had, and he rose up and passed over the river and set his face toward the Mount Gilead. And it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob was fled. And he took his brethren with him and pursued after him 7 days' journey. And they overtook him in the Mount Gilead. And Elohim came to Laban the Syrian in a dream when? By night, and said to him, take heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. Pattern. Yahuwah's advanced preparation intent on preservation. His pattern. Yahuwah is prepared. Was he prepared for Moshe to raise the tabernacle on Zadok's calendar? We are now going to pass over Moshe and skip ahead to Joshua. Yes, you most likely have already guessed. We're going to look if Yahuwah had made advanced preparations for the preservation of Yasharal. The question is, did Yahuwah make advanced preparations for the people traversing into the land of Canaan? Deuteronomy 6:10. And it shall be, when Yahuwah thy Elohim shall have brought thee into the land, which he swore unto thy fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give thee great and goodly cities, which thou hast buildest not. Already prepared for you. Here it is. You didn't build this, but it's here for you. Verse 11. And houses full of good things, which thou filledest not, and wells digged, which thou diggedst not, vineyards and olive trees, which thou plantedst not, when thou shalt have eaten and be full. Preparations for his people, preservation of his people, preparedness for his people. Joshua was chosen to bring Yasharal into Canaan, where Yahuwah's advanced preparation preserved life and promoted a flourishing of his people. Can we apply this preparedness to Moshe raising the tabernacle on the Zadok calendar? Did Yahuwah take the time to prepare for himself to be buried? Was there a preparation near? Indeed, Yahuwah did prepare. There were no less than 4 preparation applications in the crucifixion week. There was the preparation for unleavened bread, convocation. There was the preparation night for burial of his body. There was a preparation of purchased spices on the 6th cycle. And there is a preparing for the 7th day Shabbat. Want to take a quick peek? At dawn, on the left-hand side, at dawn, we go through Abib 14. There's the 9th hour where Yahuwah died. It is the preparation of the Pesach. And at the night was when his body was prepared for burial, right here on the Pesach. Then we come to the first convocation of unleavened bread here. The ladies observed the high convocation according to the Torah. Then we come to the 6th cycle of the week. It's the preparation for the Shabbat, no doubt, Friday in pagan terms, so that we can understand this. So what preparation did the ladies do on the 6th cycle to be prepared for the first cycle? Didn't they buy spices? And when the Shabbat was passed, that's referencing the convocation of unleavened bread on the 15th, and when the Shabbat was passed, Miriam from Magdala and Miriam, the mother of Yaakov and Shalomah, bought spices to go and anoint him. They were preparing to to visit the tomb to wrap him in spices on the first cycle morning. They were prepared. So in these few days, there was many different preparations. You think Yahuwah had that planned from the word Bereshit, or was that coincidence? It's now time to reconnect with the question concerning the monumental event of raising the tabernacle on the first day of the month in the 2nd year in the wilderness. Why, on the Zadok Enoch 364 calendar, is there no preparation provision recorded of Yahuwah establishing a straight line shadow of Teshuva in order to positively align the wilderness tabernacle correctly with the Matzeroth? Why can you not find a preparation for the laying down of the shadow for Moshe to raise the tabernacle according to that day of Teshuva on the calendar of Zadok? Why is it not there? Is Yahuwah at fault? Or is it the calendar of Zadok, the 364-day calendar that has no alignment with Scripture? Yahuwah is prepared. Zadok was not. Yahuwah is nothing short of meticulous in terms of preparation for preserving his people. Can you see any sign of a Zadok preparation cycle laying the shadow of Teshuva for perfect wilderness tabernacle alignment with the Matzerot being life? How can the 364-day calendar be connected to the light? There was no preparation for the raising of that tabernacle to be in alignment with the plan of salvation in the Matzerot. No preparation. How can it be connected to the light? It's not. It's that simple. So what is dead with the Dead Sea calendar, the Dead Sea Scroll? It's 364 days a year. That's what's dead. It does not exist in the kingdom of Yahuwah. We have briefly viewed a few interesting examples of Yahuwah's preparedness. Will we see this same characteristic provided for Moshe, supporting the command to raise the wilderness tabernacle? Will the preparation cycle reveal the straight line shadow of Teshuva going east to west for proper alignment with the Matzerot? Here's a few slides taken from the study of Moshe's wisdom. We're looking very, very specifically at the last days of the first year in the wilderness, when Moshe was commanded to raise the tabernacle on the first day in the second year, first day of the first month. We're having a look here. This is a chart of the first year. The month is number 11. The days of the week are on the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You'll see the blue line here designates the seventh day Sabbath with the seventh colored blue also. And if you go across to the numbers, you will see that's designated in blue to verify a seventh day Sabbath. It's the 11th month. It's the 30th day of the month right here. 11 times 30 is 330. So we have the cycles of the year right here in this column. Everything's in alignment. It's the end of month number 11. Let's go to month number 12. You count out 1 to 7 through the weeks. We come down to the 347th day of the year, or sorry, 347th day at the end of this slide. It's month number 12. Come over to the left-hand side. I want you to count out the days of the week in month number 12. We go 1 to 7, and we come down to 1 to 6. Here we are. It's a preparation day. It's the 6th cycle of the week. I want you to come across, it's the 30th day of the month. It's the day of Teshuva. Why? Because 12 times 30 equals 360. You can see on this column in the middle of this slide, it's the final day of the year. It's 360. Why is that important? Because if you look on the left, it's a preparation day. Moshe was commanded to raise the tabernacle the very next day. How could he raise the tabernacle without the preparation of the shadow being laid on the day of Teshuva? Was he just shooting at the hip? Oh yeah, let's lay it this direction. Looks good. There's a cactus over there. No. Yahuwah had prepared right from the word Bereshit, so that this day, this preparation day, would lay the shadow on the ground. So the next day after 360, being the first day of the new year, is when he could raise the tabernacle. But for right now, it's day 360. It's Teshuva. It's the equinox. And it's the last cycle of the year, 360. On this preparation, Moshe staked out the measurements on the ground according to the shadow light for proper tent of meeting orientation. This is to be expected. We should not be surprised. Yahuwah's pattern is to be planned ahead, prepared at all times. The importance of orienting the dwelling place, the tabernacle, orienting it accurately, is clearly understood from Solomon's temple. It's also understood from the documentation that we read by Julian Morgenstern, where the light went in through the gate and into the very specific place in the temple on 2 specific days of the year, the days of Teshuva. The orientation was specifically determined or to determine the cycle of Teshuva. Accuracy. Yahuwah is accurate at all times. The light of the sun on the Teshuva cycle was to enter into the Kodesh place. We understand this from Solomon's temple with the 2 entrance pillars of Yachin and Boaz. So let's go to the next day, the new day of the new year. Again, it's the 6th cycle of the week preparation. It's the 30th cycle of the month, and next day is a 7th-day Sabbath. It's New Year cycle number 1. We came over, it's the first cycle of the year. This is the first cycle of the month. The command, Moshe, raise the tabernacle. Exodus 40, verse 2. Yahuwah's work, raise the tabernacle meeting on his premier moed. I was shocked when I first saw this. I understood there's no way you to work on the Sabbath day, on the Shabbat. And then when I counted out these calendar charts, counted out all 12 months, probably 10 times, because I needed to be absolutely certain that Moshe raised the tabernacle on the 7th-day Shabbat, which he indeed did. And I learned a lesson. When Yahuwah gives you a command, it does not matter what day it's on. You do it. You simply obey. That's what Moshe did. The shadow had been laid down on the day of Teshuva. The orientation was sure. On New Year's cycle, number 1, he raised the tabernacle in perfect alignment with the Mazzaroth in the sky. Consider the Zadok and Enoch 364-day calendar. We are told this calendar existed from creation. Did it? Moshe raised the tabernacle on the first cycle after the 360th cycle of the year. It was on a 7th-day Shabbat. Moshe was then 4 cycles short of the 364 calendar specification. Moshe would have needed to wait 4 more cycles to raise the tabernacle on Zadok's 4th cycle start of their new year. Yet we read of no such instruction from Yahuwah. I ask you, how loud can deafening silence roar? What calendar existed from creation, and what calendar has no alignment with Scripture whatsoever? By accurate scriptural account, Moshe raised the tabernacle according to Yahuwah's command on the cycle immediately following the Teshuva shadow sign, the 360th degree and cycle. It was the first cycle of the first month of the 2nd year in the wilderness. The Mazzaroth is Yahuwah's grand celestial compass. Question: was Moshe's wilderness tabernacle the reflected earthly light compass? Was it then out of sync by 4 degrees, causing total navigational misalignment? Wouldn't this affect not only their physical journey, but more importantly, their spiritual experience? What about us today? What calendar are we paying allegiance to? The one that was prepared for Moshe, or the one that shows no preparation whatsoever? Before wrapping this study up, we're going to look at some information documented by Julian Morgenstern. He was an American rabbi and the fourth president of the Hebrew Union College in Ohio. One of his passions was documenting the roots of Judaism. One of his books, The Calendars of Ancient Israel, Volume 10, 1935, has a huge story of awesome information about the evolution of calendars, starting from the original, from creation, through the different calendar phases. Did I say that loud enough? Through the different calendar phases. I thought Yahuwah did not change, yet here he is marking the changes in calendar, lots of them. What calendar is that? Julian Morgenstern outlines the gradual phasing in of the lunar system from Babylon and how the gradual process developed to eventually erase Yahuwah's calendar of the covenant. Through this fabulous source, we are provided with a clear step-by-step view of the gradual erosion imposed upon Yahuwah's calendar of grand design from Zion. The destruction is seen from the outright manipulation to complete removal of Yahuwah's calendar paradigms. That's a picture of the opening page on the book. I'm just going to read on the left. I'm just going to read from the underline in the red. I know it's hard to read. This is just a thought I want you to think on, and then we're going to the other page. It is impossible not to correlate these additions, 12 days of dedication of the altar, with the celebration of the New Year's festival in Babylonia in honor of Marduk, another pagan god, on the first 11 days of Nisan, the first month of the Babylonian calendar. Think about that. Days of allegiance going to a pagan god on the first 11 days of Nisan. But that's not too bad, or shall I say, there's worse. Let's have a look over here. I'm going to be reading on the right-hand side. I'm going to start at the very top. Yeah, I'm going to start at the very top. In Exodus 12, verse 18, must have gone hand in hand with the change in the system of reckoning the day. Hang on. Yahuwah said he did not change. But here, on this calendar, there's a change. Let me start again. Must have gone hand in hand the change in the system of reckoning the day, no longer from morning to morning as of old, but now from evening to evening. I hope there's bells and whistles going off right now. This is when sunset to sunset came into fruition, everyone. He's documenting this. And with this, in turn, as an inevitable result, came the redating of the festivals beginning no longer in the morning, but now in the evening, sunset to sunset. Thus, for example, the Sukkot festival, which had formerly commenced with the morning of the 7th month, the 15th day, under the older system, the beginning of the day now was made to begin with the evening of the 15th. Under the new system, under the what? Under the new system, now the beginning of the day, but actually, in point of time, half a day earlier than the former beginning of the day. The effect of this change, or at least one effect, was to make the beginning of this festival coincide exactly, instead of only approximately, as had been the case under the older system, with what? With the night of the full moon. An adjustment of calendar to accommodate lunar worship. Here, everything was changed towards the night of the full moon. And undoubtedly, this was an important consideration in this reorganization of the calendar. Corresponding to this was as we have seen, the advancing of the moment of beginning the Matzot festival by half a day. Hold on just a minute. They are resetting the time for the unleavened bread festival. Let's read it again. Corresponding to this, that's the starting of the day at sunset and the full moon. Corresponding to this was, as we have seen, the advancing of the moment of beginning the Matzot festival by half a day to the night of the first month of the 15th, instead of following the morning, as had been the practice previously. Major change here. Yahuwah's day start at dawn was discarded, and the sunset had been adopted. And this, in turn, made the beginning of the Matzot festival coincide not only with the night of the full moon, but also with the night of the celebration of the Passover. Don't worry that Yahuwah said Passover is on the 14th and unleavened bread is on the 15th. Now, in this altered calendar, it can be both on the same day. Interesting. So that in consequence, the two festivals, Matzorot and Passover, now became identified and merged completely into one festival, instead of, as had been apparently been the case up to this very time, the Passover being celebrated independently during the night and the Matzot festival beginning only the next morning, after the Passover celebration was completely finished. I would recommend that everyone takes this study, looks at it again, and when you get to this point, I would stop, put a pause on the PowerPoint, and I would read this over 4 or 5 times. I want you to understand when Yahusha was speaking in John John 7 verse 7, 6 and 7, he said, "Your time is always ready." That word there is etymos. It's adjustable. This is exactly what Yahusha understood took place. This is what he was countering when he was on this earth. The manipulation. When he said, "Your time is always ready," he was not shooting from the hip. He knew exactly what he was talking about. It's recorded in history right here. Are we paying attention? A couple more slides left. Since we now have an idea of what regulates a Shoneh, let's ask this question. What is a Shoneh? And what constitutes its Hebrew identity according to Yahusha? Remember, nothing was made without Yahusha. So in the next series of studies, we're going to be digging into this word, Shoneh. We're going to be breaking it down and looking at it very, very closely. In fact, we're going to be looking at it so close, we're going to understand how it is that Shoneh is recorded up to the point of Hezekiah. 5 days were added, and Shoneh is recorded after Hezekiah also. How can it be a change to Shoneh and not be changed? That's what we're going to be looking at coming up in the next series of study. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been a blessing to you to understand that the prophecy of the 365 calendar spoken to Noah is what took effect at the time of the sundial incident with Hezekiah, and that it is coming to an end because man has an allotted time of 120 type years. They will end so that the 3 prophecies of Revelation can be accomplished. Are we paying attention? Are we marking that shadow? Or are we just letting it slide by? If you need assistance with this information, please send your questions to Timothy Asselford at questions@studythecalendar.com. I want to thank you for being with me today. Thank you for your time. And I ask Yahuwah to give you the blessings of Shalom.